Poverty, An Issue of Capability by Lori Aiken and Jordan Cohen. Poverty is the inability to achieve a reasonable quality of life as a result of forces which impedes one's capabilities. These forces can be both monetary and social. Poverty should be measured using the supplemental poverty measure rather than the OPM and should be defined in terms of quality of life and the ability to obtain the necessary resources to participate in society. The following are important terms in our discussion of poverty. Capabilities are those forces that allow an individual to achieve a minimally decent standard of living. An example of this is access to a standard of education, which provides a child the skills to be able to fully participate in society as an adult. Functionings are those acts which an individual is currently able to perform. An example of this is Mary, who is fluent in Spanish. Her functioning is that she can converse with other Spanish speakers. Relative poverty is a measurement of poverty in terms of the average standard of living within a society. We believe that this measurement, although not central to our proposal, ties in with our advocacy of the SPM insofar as it is fundamental in its application. Within our discussion of poverty, we will make reference to what we deem a reasonable quality of life. By this, we mean a life in which one's food, clothing, shelter, and utility needs are met, and one can participate in society without shame. How do function and capability relate? One's functioning is what one is currently able to achieve or to do, while one's capability is what one has the potential to achieve within the parameters of their skill sets and standards of life. Capabilities are the culmination of one's functions in order to determine what one is capable of achieving. An example of this is Jordan, whose dad is a baseball coach. Because of the connections he provides her, she has the capability of earning a living in athletics. However, she is overwhelmingly unathletic. Her functioning is that of a small child without motor skills. Why do capabilities matter? Income lowness is a valuable indicator of poverty, but does not fully encompass an individual's quality of life, or those factors which contribute to their poverty. A solution to the shortcoming of the definition of poverty in terms of income lowness is a capabilities measure. In a capabilities measure, one is deemed impoverished not simply in terms of income or lack thereof, but rather if he or she has the resources to achieve a reasonable standard of life. An example of this is Sarah, who lives above the OPM's poverty line. However, she is an ethnic minority and is therefore disproportionately targeted by the law enforcement of this society. As a result of a criminal record, she struggles to find a job that allows her to lead a minimally dignified life. While she lives above the OPM's poverty line, her capabilities are limited because of her ethnicity. By our proposed standard of poverty measurement, Sarah is poor because of her minimal capabilities, rather than her income. Her income lowness is a factor in her poverty, but does not tell the whole story. Definitions of poverty measurement. The OPM, official poverty measure, is how poverty in America is currently measured, while the SPM, the supplemental poverty measure, is an additional measurement that addresses the shortcomings of the OPM. We are advocating for the SPM to be the central measure of poverty. The OPM was created in 1965 and dictates a minimally decent standard of living, as proposed by Molly Orshansky. The system of measurement is essentially based on the notion that 1/3 of a family's income is spent on food.
Benefits of the OPM. The OPM gives an absolute and therefore easily assessed measurement of poverty. This measure presents a concise definition of those who are poor because it gives a specific understanding of who falls below a calculated line and therefore what constitutes poverty. The simplicity of the OPM is cost efficient in terms of benefits. Although poverty measure does not necessarily translate into concerns of welfare, the OPM presents a smaller number of people living in poverty than SPM, and therefore presents less of a challenge in terms of addressing the needs of those who are impoverished. We find many flaws in using the OPM to calculate poverty. In John Iceland's Poverty in America, he expresses that experts of virtually every stripe agree that the nation's official poverty measure, never designed to be permanent, is outdated. First off, although the OPM is adjusted for inflation, its flaw lies in the outdated notion that an American family spends a third of its income on food. Food costs are far less substantial than they were at the time of the OPM's genesis. Secondly, the OPM does not take into account the geographic differences in expenses. An example of this is that property costs in Manhattan are far higher than they are in rural Virginia. Furthermore, the OPM does not take into account necessary expenses. Some of these expenses are work-related transportation, childcare, taxes, and medical out-of-pocket expenses. Lastly, the OPM does not take into account cash or near-cash benefits. This includes TANF, commonly known as welfare checks, and SNAP, which are food stamps. The supplemental poverty measure is an alternative measure of poverty currently used to provide greater insight into those factors that the OPM does not address. Like the OPM, the SPM measures income, but addresses those factors that affect a family's disposable income that the OPM does not. The SPM provides a more conclusive measurement of poverty and gives a more comprehensive definition of a family's disposable income. It includes geographic cost diversity, in-kind benefits such as TANF and SNAP, and notably, it excludes necessary expenses such as income tax, Social Security payroll tax, child care, health insurance, and medical out-of-pocket expenses. All in all, the SPM addresses those who are poor due to some lack of capability as a result of necessary expenses. Potential flaws of the SPM include an increased number of impoverished people and a higher cost associated with researching a more comprehensive assessment. However, the SPM does not create more poor people. These individuals already lack a minimally decent standard of living. However, the SPM simply recognizes this. Essentially, those who are deemed impoverished by the SPM are already experiencing low quality of life, but are now labeled as poor in terms of a more comprehensive measure. Finally, the cost of implementing this more comprehensive assessment is minimal in terms of the individual taxpayer. This chart displays the differences between the OPM and the SPM in terms of measurement units, poverty threshold, threshold adjustments, and resource measure. Essentially, the SPM includes cohabitating households, provides an updated poverty threshold in terms of household expenses, adjusts for geographic differences, and includes and excludes costs that affect the household's income. How capabilities in the SPM relate. By combining the capabilities measurement and the SPM, our definition of poverty presents a holistic and accurate understanding of those factors that create poverty and limit upward mobility. The SPM is an accurate measure of the factors that limit capabilities. While one's capabilities cannot be statistically measured, the SPM captures the monetary hindrances to one's capabilities and consequently the achievement of a reasonable quality of life. SPM is the most effective measure of poverty because it provides the most comprehensive measure of disposable income. We believe that our definition of poverty in terms of capability is best addressed by the use of the SPM. The SPM takes into account factors that both impede and enlarge capabilities, such as in-kind benefits and non-discretionary costs. Poverty is a complex moral issue. It cannot solely be defined in terms of a dollar amount, nor can it accurately be measured without some form of currency. The use of the SPM, in conjunction with the understanding of poverty in terms of one's capabilities, provides a comprehensive answer to the complex question of poverty.